ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. First of all, I welcome you all to the familiarization course on Anand Kaaraj. This presentation covers only the basics of Anand Kaaraj. Term Anand Kaaraj, however, raises a lot of questions in one's mind, such as, is it a ritual? What is Anand? What is the Kaaraj? What's its relationship to the worldly marriage and the spiritual side? And there are also some questions regarding which actually generates a lot of anxiety for the couples who are getting married. So what is Gurmat? What is Maryada? And what are some of the traditions and protocols and the process, how this marriage ceremony is going to be performed. So this particular presentation, I will try to answer all these questions as I go through the presentation. In Sikhism, there are six ceremonies, which I listed over here. But two of the most important ones are Amrit Sanchar and Anand Kaaraj. Why I say they are the most important? Amrit Sanchar is just like actually baptization in Sikhism. The other one is the Anand Kaaraj, which is the marriage ceremony for the Sikhs. But the biggest change in life comes from Anand Kaaraj. Because Amrit Sanchar, when you get baptized, you may have already been practicing everything, which you are supposed to do after you actually get baptized. But Anand Kaaraj, your new life actually starts as a householder, which brings out a big change in both of the lives of the participants, groom and as well as the bride. So before we go any further, let's actually go through some of the definitions of some key terms, such as marriage, Anand Kaaraj, and Lama. Marriage. That's the legally recognized relationship of two people as husband and wife. Anand Kaaraj is the Sikh marriage, as I said it before, but it consists of two parts. One is Anand, the other one is Kaaraj. Anand means ultimate bliss, and the Kaaraj is any social or spiritual function, affair, deed, or work, that's called Kaaraj. So when you combine the two words, it becomes Anand Kaaraj, which is a physical, social, legal relationship between two people who will help each other in achieving the ultimate human goal of a sacred union with Vaheguru. Next term is also very important, which is law. You are going to hear a lot about that one, because that's the heart of the ceremony. Law is actually swearing the old relationship to get into a new one. In this particular case, both bride and groom, they've been actually living with their parents, and now, actually they have to get into a role of a householder and build their own lives. So they have to establish a new relationship, not only with themselves, but the ties with the relatives or families of both sides. Next term is Lama. Lama is the plural of Lam. And they are actually traditionally referred to as Fere. What it is circumambulating Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. and that's when you officially actually get married, when you perform the lama. Let's briefly cover some history, brief history of marriages in Sikhism. Prior to Guruji's time, the marriages were done according to whatever the Hindu culture was. But during Guruji's time, that ceremony actually evolved in 10 Guruji's time. It started with very basics, rejecting some of the traditions which had no meaning at all, and adopting some of the traditions which were meaningful to both bride and groom in establishing a new household. During Tenji Guruji's time, so it took a very definitive form how the marriages were performed. And we have a lot of evidence, actually on that one from the Sakhis as well as the history. But in the 18th century, latter part, after the Guruji's time, some of the old traditions started creeping in, and toward the end of 19th century, it needed some of the changes because of those old traditions. So in the latter part of 19th century and the earlier 20th century, a reform was made to the process and procedure how the marriages were conducted. And toward actually the first part of the 20th century, it was established or institutionalized as how the marriages should be performed. Sikh Maryada was created, which is the code of conduct for the Sikhs. And now we perform most of our Sikh marriages according to that. Okay. So basis for this Maryada, code of conduct, there were traditions, old traditions, and some of the teachings which are contained in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, our holy scripture, and then when they institutionalized, what they did was they actually took both of these or traditions and Gurmat and created the Maryada. Let's look at it, what it takes to actually solemnize a marriage. There are a couple of options. One is unconventional, where people elope and go to Reno or someplace and get married. The other one is conventional, where you can go to the court and get married and or perform the marriage ceremony according to your religious beliefs or faith. So those religious and cultural, let's look at it there, those two terms and what is contained in our actually Sikrat Maryada. Most of the religious are unique one to Sikh religion, and very few got adopted from the old Hindu religion, where, as an example, the fere circumambulating was started by the Hindus, and it was adopted because Guruji felt this was a meaningful thing. The others are Very few of them are old Indian cultural. As an example, carrying a kirpan, the which groom does it. Anand Kaaraj, when you look at it, so what's its significance? It has both worldly as well as spiritual significance. First of all, worldly point of view, you solemnize your marriage. And thinking that it's going to actually bring happiness, once you get married. But I listed it as a false thinking. Let me just say this one, when you actually talk about anything that's true, that means that thing does not change with time, it's eternal. But when something changes, which is antonym of actually truth, is false. So that's only temporary. Yeah, happiness may last, but it's temporary. But the spiritual side is accomplished through the Lama, which are the 4 stages of the soul of a human being, which passes through in order to attain the bliss or ultimate happiness, which is true, which is forever, which is eternal. And that happens only when the soul actually re-emerges with Vaheguru. So this mixture of temporal and spiritual side creates a life which is a holistic life. And thus a person achieved Anand. So in this case, both bride and groom can become one with God and achieve that eternal life. So the Sikhs always seek the true happiness, which is the bliss. And that is what Anand Kaaraj ceremony is all about. False happiness comes from just the relationship of bodily relationship, which is temporary. It's mostly, selfish, and that's why it's called, actually false relationship. In a selfish relationship, one is always taking things from the other or trading. If you give me this one, you give me happiness, I'll give you happiness. If you give me money, I'll give you this kind of money back, or I'll do this or that. And same thing happens, that means the love between the two people is conditional. If you love me, I'll love you. And the trust is very shaking trust, wavering trust. But on the other hand, when you actually talk about, next one, the true happiness comes in from the soul, which is eternal. And that demands sacrifice on part of each one of them. And in this case, it's only giving. It's called prem. Prem is the ultimate form of love, which is unconditional. It's not, if you love me, I love you. You love that person, period. Faith is unwavering, so you trust each other completely. But to reach that state of soul, it requires hard effort on part of both of them. And they got to help each other to achieve that. But the Sikhs borrowed a page from our holy scripture, where Anand Kaaraj the Vyah is the reference under Lama, and it has a lot of similarities and commonalities with the worldly type of marriage. So spiritual union with God requires the discipline and the kind of commitment we talked about previously. And in this particular case, they wanted to actually, the Sikh scholars, when our Gurujis previously wanted to create that Anand Kaaraj so that people can actually achieve the similar kind of results. Commonality-wise, when you look at it, you see that in a worldly marriage there's groom, bride, and today there's not a mediator all the time, but most of the time it could be a friend, it could be any relative or anything, who recommended or brought two people together, and then there's a marriage party involved in it. On the spiritual side, when you look at it, it's the Vaheguru. Vaheguru is the groom, and bride is each one of us as a human being. Our soul is the bride, and mediator in this particular case is the Guru. And marriage party is the Avasan Sangam, which is the congregation as a whole. But it needs a lot of commitment. And there's a commonality in that one too, actually, where in the worldly marriage as well as the spiritual marriage, you have to have the presence of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, our Holy Scripture. And you do supplication, the prayer for the blessing, and you take vows in both cases. For example, I mentioned actually if you get baptized, etc. Songs of joy, when you actually are going through that one, you are always in a high state of mind, where you are actually singing the Lord's praises. Now let's look at it, some of the traditions and the process itself. So what I did on left-hand side, I put down, some of the traditions, such as Milni, which is a meeting of the relatives of both sides, groom and bride, and there is the singing of hymns from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, carrying a kirpan, I already mentioned that one. Then how did you actually seat the groom and bride when you are going through this ceremony, and the ardas, and so on. I listed all these. But here you will notice that when I talk about Sikhya, that is the teaching which is in line with Guruji's wisdom. According to our code of conduct, it should be done after the handling of apron, handing of the apron to the bride, and before you start the heart of the ceremony, which is the Lama. Lama itself is a sequential thing. It involves reciting the Sri Guru Granth Sahib and singing, then singing the same lines which were recited by Paisa, and then also circumambulating actually Sri Guru Granth Sahib. As far as the process is concerned, for Lama, so this is one Lam, how it's done. So it's a repeated process. You repeat all these, for each one of the 4 Lamas. You perform Matha Tek, you bow to Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and then you actually stand in front of it, and then you circumambulating, and then you actually come back and stand in front of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and as soon as the singing starts, you matha take and you sit down. Other traditions are singing some of the concluding hymns. I put the asterisk with Sikhya. The code of conduct said you should actually conduct it right here, between this activity and the four lama. But sometimes people do it right at the end, you know. So I'll actually, when I go through the actual process, I'll mention that. And then that's the concluding of, you know, the ceremony, and after that, the langar is served. So first thing is merely, which is ceremonial meeting, embracing the brides and the groom, and it could be done directly at the Gurdwara, or it could be done any other place, you know, actually at home, or other places where, you know, actually you introduce the relatives of both sides to each other. And the important thing to remember is whenever you are going to do it, you must actually perform the ardas or supplication to God to obtain His blessing. And at that particular time, the groom and the bride, as well as the parents of both groom and bride, you know, are present along with their all the relatives, etc. Okay. By the way, I want to actually mention is all these pictures I have taken it from Bibi Amrinder Kaur and Sardar Sandeep Singh Ji's wedding. And Bibi Amrinder Kaur is the daughter of Sardar Harpal Singh Ji, and Bibi Pushpinder Kaur Ji, who are one of the, you know, actually our elders in this particular Gurdwara. And this was the first marriage performed when we actually moved into this new building. As you will notice, I said, you know, actually the groom always actually carries the kirpan throughout this Anand Kaaraj ceremony. It's symbolic that he is ready to accept the responsibility to protect his family as a new householder. And this actually goes along with the Miri Piri concept, and that's why it was an old tradition from Hindu religion which Guruji has gladly accepted and made it part of our Anand Kaaraj ceremony. As the marriage party member comes in, they will actually come and do the matha take, bow down to the Holy Scripture, and then take a seat in the appropriate section of the hall. In this particular case, you will notice that most of the time in our Gurdwaras, the men folks, you know, sit on one side, and the women folks sit on the other side. And that's the old tradition, you know, and it is being carried out today. As there will be some kirtan in progress at that time, they will sit down and listen to it. And when the groom comes in, he will do the same thing, do the matha take, bow down to Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and he will take a seat in the men's section and listen to the kirtan. As the bride enters or comes to the vase, she does the same thing. She does the matha take, and then she takes a seat besides, the groom on left-hand side. But both of them, you will notice, they'll be facing Sri Guru Granth Sahib. Then, the Paisa will actually ask everybody to remain seated and only the parents and the bride and the groom to stand up so they can actually perform the prayer to obtain the permission to proceed with this particular Anand Kaaraj. You will notice parents of both, they are standing, groom's father, bride's father, groom's mother, and they are all facing towards Sri Guru Granth Sahib. After that, a divine order is taken from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And before they do the Nama and take the vow of marriage, what happens is the parents, one of the parents, typically father, he is the one directly who actually gives the apron and hands over, drapes it over the shoulder of the groom and hands the other end to the bride, his daughter. Actually what it signifies is that this is the approval of the father and the mother, parent, so that their daughter can actually live with the new groom and build up their family. So at that particular time, the Ragis directly sing these particular lines from the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which is also actually saying that the apron is handed over to the bride from the groom by the parents. I want to mention in this particular case, the reason it is in Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is that's what is happening. Now the Guru is also providing this palla of actually the sole bride to the groom, which is Vaheguru, and handing over to them. Actually he is acting as the father of both, actually both souls. Now the process of Lama starts after that. And as I said before, each Lam is recited, then certain rules are followed. In traditions and protocols are observed in this particular case by both groom and the bride, and each Lam will be sung after the recitation is completed, and this process will be repeated for all 4 Lamas. So in this particular case, Paisa is reciting while the bride and the groom are very attentively listening to the words of the Lama, the first Lama, which is the instruction from Guruji to the couple. At that particular time, they will actually matha take, which signifies that they have acknowledged the instruction, and they will stand up in front of Sri Guru Granth Sahib. This and that indicates that now they are ready to follow the instruction, Guruji's instruction. Okay? As soon as the singing of the lam is started by the ragi, they will actually start circumambulating Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. But they will do it at a very slow pace. So walking around signifies that the Guruji becomes the focus of their lives. You will notice that it is done actually clockwise when you are circumambulating. Why? Because it was a tradition long time ago, and it still continues. You always keep whoever you have the most respect towards your right. Okay? As, for example, our earth revolves around the sun and it goes clockwise because the earth's focus is still, the sun. So same way, you always keep Guruji to your right. So both of them are keeping Guruji to their right. So it is just continuation. You go around and keep on going and come back and then stand in front of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji until the singing of that particular lam stops. Now what you are saying is that you are committed to follow that instruction. Then they would matha take and sit down, signifying that they are ready for the next instruction, which is the second lam. And this process will continue until all 4 lamas are completed. Let me just show you the essence of the 4 lama up here. What are those instructions and what they mean? First law is where, with Vaheguru's blessing, Guruji is giving the teaching to the bride and the groom to say that as you are going to be performing your temporal duties, it is also your duty to perform the spiritual tasks which are necessary for you to achieve that eternal happiness. So you must remember God in order to do that. In second lam, what happens is, here, actually where Guruji meets both of them. Meeting does not mean, meeting means they have come and they did the matha take, but they may not have accepted Guruji as the Guruji and put all his teaching in their heart and run their life according to that. But once you actually start doing that, run your life according to that one, according to Guru's wisdom and divine word, that's when you really meet Guruji. So in the second lam, that's what Guruji explains. So in the third lam, what happens is, because in the second lam, what he has done has actually convinced the souls of both of them, touched the souls of both bride and the groom, and he's telling them that the most important thing in your life is, the duty is to remember Nam, and you remember him because he has all the great qualities in him. And you want to bring all those qualities in your life. In order to do that one, you can only do it through unconditional love or praying. So Guruji, up to this point, by giving them instructions, are actually really, throughout Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, is actually preparing them for that one so that they can actually work. That's the main function of Guruji is to develop the love for God. So whoever you have love for, then you will remember him all the time. This is whether worldly thing or it's a spiritual thing. And once you actually reach that stage, what happens is then the third stage, then you develop the yearning to meet Vaheguru. Okay? That's what third Naam says, that you have developed that yearning and you longing for Vaheguru. So in the fourth Naam, that's concluded, where actually what happens is you have actually achieved the union with God, and that's complete the process of Anand Kaaraj at that particular time. Right? Then after the Nama, the mood of the whole congregation is mood of thanksgiving. And what happens is, it brings immense satisfaction and happiness to everyone, every participant, including the bride and the groom. And at that particular time, the Ragi Jatha will actually sing some of the shabd from Sri Guru Granth Sahib. They may sing one, two, but not all of them. And some of the time, even the bride and the groom sings too. Okay, this can last from very short time to very long time, depending upon the mood of the congregation. Okay? But the whole thing is that this one, the groom and the bride, they are actually really found the Lord husband. In other words, they have received the instruction and now they understand it. And what they are saying is, we are making a commitment, and we are made the commitment in this particular, in these Lama, and we try to achieve that, satisfaction. After that, there are some of the shabds, hymns from directly Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which are dealing with the blessings from the Guru and from God and the Sangat, and that's where actually some of these come in, and they may sing one or two of those shabds at the end. Subsequent to that, the Ragi will then sing the 6 stanzas of Anand Sahib, which is a standard procedure whenever you are bringing any congregation to a conclusion at that particular time. You call it a vote, and you must actually go sing these 6 stanzas. Once you have accomplished that one, as I mentioned before, then you are actually talking about Sikhya. It should be, according to the code of conduct, done as soon as the palla was handed over, because that way groom and the bride will know what to actually expect from the Lama. But what has happened is sometimes that is done very briefly up there, and then at the end it has become customary, actually some elder or paisa, somebody or preacher, they will actually go and actually give the advice, or which is in line with Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, with the wisdom of Guruji, and tell them, how they can be actually living happily in their temporal life as well as their spiritual life. So here are some of the contents of that Sikhya or advice. Life together calls for understanding and adjustment. As I said, it's a sacrifice. It's on both parts, not on part of just, bride or the groom. They both have to actually change. As a matter of fact, they must not, actually, they should help each other making that adjustment rather than making it to, actually something you are not doing this or you are, it's not a criticism, but it's working together to achieve the ultimate goal. So both are willing to actually, should be willing to actually sacrifice for each other and for the rest of the family. And it's a, Guruji's wisdom says, it's always pleasure in giving, not in taking. So same thing happens when you are going to be dealing with each other, you should always actually exercise humility and forgiveness. And same thing goes with when you are dealing with the relatives of both sides. And there should be no distinction. This is your relative, this is mine, because this is now ours, rather than yours than mine. Sharing life together, same respect and love for everybody, the other parents and so on, and keeping in touch with Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji all the time, because that's where you are going to actually, really, your souls are going to actually remerge with Vaheguru and achieve that ultimate, actually goal of eternal happiness. And some of the time, they quote from Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and I put down here, actually what that means. Okay. Then there is a supplication again, performed, prayer is said, and divine order is taken, and then the Krapashad, the blessing, is actually distributed. And following all that actually concludes the whole ceremony at there, and then you come back to the langar hall, where langar is served, and everybody sits in rows, and this is a good example. This particular tradition was started by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. This is really human equality in practice. So what we are saying is, what happens is, now you don't actually see any difference between his or her parents, relatives, and everybody. It's not, actually groom's parents are at a higher status, and the bride's parents are at a lower status. Everybody is equal. So everybody is served by the same people, and the equality is really practiced here. In summary, I want to actually say that it's a sacred union of a couple for living together and achieving everlasting happiness. It must be accomplished with utmost of reverence, with the humility. You do not go into the darbar where you have an ounce of homage or anything, when you are actually going in and bound before directly Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. He is the King of Kings, and you should show humility, and that's why you are doing the Mathatik so many times. And whatever you are going to do is not a ritual, empty ritual. These are all traditions and protocols or rituals, you want to call it, meaningful ones, which are endorsed by actually Sri Guru Granth Sahib. And it's your firm commitment, not that we are going to get married and then actually look at all around, what happens. If you don't have a firm commitment, going into it, then you come out, and a lot of time it is not a happy ending for the marriages. Okay. With that, I conclude this particular presentation. Thank you very much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji